So today's Mishna Yomi is Emir Hashem Berachos Perek Aleph, Mishna is Hey of Perek Aleph, and Emir Hashem also will begin. We will begin the second parak of Mishnah Aleph. So Mishnah Hey Perek Aleph begins as well. Chapter 1, Mishnah 5. Maskirin Yitzias Esrayim Ba'leilos. We go ahead and we remember the Exodus at night. Now remember again what this means is we recite the third parsha of Kriyas Shema even at night. Even at night. So remember again, what's unique about this is the primary aspect of the third chapter of the third paragraph of Kriyas Shema is tzitzis. And even though the mitzvah of tzitzis does not apply at night, we will still go ahead and recite the chapter because it has a reference to the Exodus. Amar Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah. It's also a very beautiful Mishnah. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah said, Hari anika ben shivim shana v'lo zachisi shete amar yitzias mitzrayim baleilos. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah says, I am like 70 years old, and I never merited to recite the Exodus at night. Now the Bar Tanura explains over here as follows. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah always felt that the Exodus should be recited at night, or should be remembered at night, as we're going to see in just a moment. When he says, Lo Zachisi, the Bar Tanura says, I've been battling this battle my whole life, and I was never successful in convincing my rabbinic colleagues to go ahead and recite the third chapter of Kriyas Shema at night, Ad Shedarsha ben Zoma, until Ben Zoma came along and he made the following drasha. Shneimar leman tiskras yom tzeischa me'eretz Yisrael kol yimei chayecha. You should remember the day you left Egypt, all the days of your life. Yimei chayecha hayamim. So yimei chayecha, that means the days. You should remember the Exodus by day. We accomplished that with Kriyas Shema of Shachris. Kol yimei chayecha, all the days of your life. That's leilos. That refers to the nighttime. And therefore, again, Reb Ben Zoma says we should recite the third paragraph of Shema, which is Vayomer, even though it's the parsha of Tzitzis, because at the end of the day, it includes a reference to remembering the Exodus. The Chachamim disagree, and the Chachamim say, Yemei chayecha olam hazeh. Yemei chayecha means you should remember the Exodus during this world. Kol yemei chayecha lahavi yimos HaMashiach. All the days of your life comes to include that even in the Messianic era, we will make reference to Exodus from Egypt. The Gemara explains what's the novelty in that. The novelty is, you might have thought that when Mashiach comes, we're going to forget about the Exodus, because after all, again, Messianic redemption will eclipse the miraculous nature of the Exodus, to which no, the Chacham say, even when Mashiach comes, we're still going to remember the Exodus, still going to remember Yitzias Mitzrayim. And in fact, this is how we paskin. This is why even by Ma'ariv, we recite all three paragraphs of Shema, even though the primary purpose of the third paragraph is the parsha of Tzitzis, and the mitzvah of Tzitzis does not apply at night. Nevertheless, we recite the third paragraph in order to facilitate remembrance of the Exodus at night. I'll just point out something very beautiful, that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah's lashon is, Lo zachisi shete amar Yitzias Mitzrayim. I never merited that Yitzias Mitzrayim should be said. I will say, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah also teaches us how we have to look at a mitzvah. That sometimes we look at mitzvahs as obligations, and sometimes obligations could become onerous. Sometimes obligations can become overwhelming. But if you look at every single mitzvah as a schus, what an opportunity. What an opportunity to learn a Mishnah. What an opportunity to learn a Blat Gemara. What an opportunity to put on tefillin. What an opportunity to keep Shabbos. What an opportunity. A schus. Everything is a merit. It fundamentally changes your approach to Yiddishkeit and one's relationship with Hashem. We'll say, Mazel Tov, that is the end of Perek Aleph. Perek Beis, second chapter, Meseches Berachos, Mishnah Aleph. Says the Mishnah, if a person was reading in the Torah. Now, literally, again, he's talking about someone who's just going ahead and learning Chumash. Let's say, by the way, it doesn't mean you're reading in a scroll. It means you're learning Chumash. And it just happens to be that you are learning the parshos of Kriyas Shema. And now again, the time for Kriyas Shema came. Im kivein libo yatsa, ve'im lav lo yatsa. So if you had kavana, if you had in mind, ultimately, to go ahead and be yotzei the mitzvah of Kriyas Shema, you're yotzei, and if not, you're not. In other words, what the Mishnah is introducing to us is something very interesting, which is the concept. There's a whole machlokes here, which is beyond our scope for this morning, but the machlokes over here has to do with what does it mean, kivein libo? What type of kavana is the Mishnah referring to? So there's a whole machlokes over here, a whole dispute, but again, We don't have to really be focused on that right now. What the Mishnah is coming to teach us is as follows, that even if technically speaking you are actively involved in something else, in this case I'm actively involved in reading the Torah, learning Chumash, but it just happens to be that I'm getting up to the parashos of Kriyas Shema, halacha l'maisa, as long as I have kavanah to go ahead and be yotzi the mitzvah of Shema, I can do so even in the context of learning Torah. Now the Mishnah introduces another interesting discussion, which will begin today and continue tomorrow, which is the halachos of hefsek. Are you permitted to go ahead and speak in the middle of Kriyas Shema or not? So listen to this. Beprakim. Now beprakim means in between the paragraphs. We're going to discuss in tomorrow's Mishnah what does it mean in between the paragraphs. But beprakim, in between paragraphs, shoel mipnei hakavod umeishiv. You are allowed to ask, to inquire about the welfare, a kavod, someone who you are obligated to honor. So the examples are, let's say you see your Rebbe, or you see your parent, right? Someone whom you are obligated to honor. If you are permitted to go ahead and inquire about their welfare in between paragraphs. In between paragraphs, umeshiv. And of course, if they go ahead and inquire about your welfare, you are permitted to go ahead and answer. Ube'emtza, what about if you're in the middle of a paragraph of Shema? And by the way, middle of paragraph of Shema, we're going to see means middle of the paragraphs of Shema and middle of the Berachos of Shema as well. We'll get to that tomorrow. Ube'emtza, shol mipnei hayira umeshiv. You're allowed to go ahead and interrupt only in order to inquire about the welfare of someone who you fear. What's the definition of someone who you fear? The Bartanura says someone who has the power of life and death over you. So someone who has someone who literally, again, you have yira, right? The Bartanura says Adam shu yare mepanav shema yahargeu. You're literally scared about someone who may chas v'shalom kill me. Not that I'm in active danger. If I'm in active danger, that's obvious. But it's saying I'm allowed to be proactive with someone whom I fear, and I can inquire about that person's welfare even in the middle of a paragraph. Umeshiv. And of course, I am permitted to respond to that person if he talks to me in the middle of the paragraph as well. Div Rabbi Meir. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Huda disagrees. Rabbi Huda says, Be'emtza shol mipnei hayira, in the middle of a paragraph, you could inquire about the welfare of someone whom you fear. Umeshiv mipnei hakavod. And you could return greetings even to someone who you don't fear, but you have an obligation to honor. Beprakim, in between paragraphs, shol mipnei hakavod, you can go ahead and inquire about the welfare of someone whom you're obligated to respect. Umeshiv shalom l'chol adam. But you could return greetings, ultimately again, to any individual. You could return right to any individual. And generally the halacha follows Rabbi Huda. That's generally what we say in Mishnah is Stam Mishnah like Rabbi Huda. But in Eretz Hashem again, we'll stop over here for today and we'll continue in tomorrow's Mishnah Yomi. What we will see is, first of all, the definition of Bein HaPrakim, between paragraphs and middle of the paragraphs, and then I'll just very quickly show you the halacha l'maisa and the Shulchan Aruch as well regarding this dispute. Shkoyach Chevra. And again, anyone who does not yet have a Mishnah, there are still Mishnayos over here for your taking. Yashakayach, everyone.